Tonight, we step away from the noise of the real world and into a fantasy realm where the stakes are comically low. What if you are the brother of the chosen one? He got the good genes and was, well, chosen, and you are his brother. We are observing the life of the unchosen brother and what it is like to live under the shadow of his hero brother. It is a story about the comfort of being ordinary in an extraordinary world and the peace found in simply getting through the day. So, do you have a sibling who is the chosen one? Or are you the chosen one? Write your answer in the comments. And, as always, please tell us what you think of the story. Now, find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and let yourself unwind.
Thwack. Squishy thud. Silence. That is the sound of the kingdom of Eldora's greatest hope, the chosen one, the wielder of the sunblade, Zephry the Golden, tripping over his own cape and impaling himself on a spike pit. A spike pit, mind you, that was clearly marked with warning signs. I mean, who puts a spike pit in the middle of a florist shop? That's a zoning violation waiting to happen. But never mind that. The point is, Zephyr is dead. Again. I stood there, staring down into the darkness of the pit. A faint golden glow began to emanate from the bottom, followed by the distinctive humming sound of a soul being uploaded to the cloud. Not the rain cloud, the celestial cloud. Seriously? I asked the empty air. It's Tuesday, Zephyr. We have taco night on Tuesdays. From the depths of the pit, a ghostly, echoing voice drifted up. Gary, avenge me. I shall return when the servers allow. Yeah, I know the drill, I muttered, shifting the weight on my hip. I wasn't holding a sword. I wasn't holding a shield. I was holding a wicker laundry basket overflowing with Zephyr's separates. Do you know how hard it is to get goblin blood out of white silk? It involves vinegar and tears, mostly my tears. I checked my pocket watch. It was 4:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. The problem with Zephyr's immortality perk is the fine print. He respawns, sure, but the celestial bureaucracy runs on a strict 9-to-5 schedule, and they observe all banking holidays. Since he died right before closing time, and I happen to know there's a Saints feast coming up on Thursday, well, we're looking at 3 to 5 business days before the Golden Boy materializes back at the save point in the Temple of Light. 3 to 5 business days. That meant until at least next Monday, I, Gary, the younger brother with a slight astigmatism, suffering from chronic back pain and an utter lack of heroic destiny, was the acting chosen one. Gary! The screech came from the florist's window. It offered a direct line of sight to our mother's cottage across the cobblestone square. I saw that, Mom yelled, leaning out the window, waving a wooden spoon like a mace. Did he die again? Did your brother die again right before the Dark Lord's minions are scheduled to raid the village? He tripped Mom, I shouted back, struggling to keep a pair of Zephyr's heroic compression shorts from falling into the dirt. It was the cape. I told him the cape was a workplace hazard. Well, don't just stand there looking like a slack-jawed turnip, she shrieked, her voice cracking with the kind of anxiety that usually results in me doing chores I hate. Get the helmet. The orcs are coming. If the morale of this village collapses, Gary, I swear to the old gods you are grounded until you are 40. I groaned. The groan started in my toes and vibrated all the way up to my throat. I hated the helmet. Setting the laundry basket down on a bench, next to a very confused cat, I reached into the extra-dimensional inventory bag Zephyr had dropped when he stumbled. I had to dig past 3 potions of minor healing, a half-eaten sandwich, and a lute he swore he was going to learn to play, until my fingers brushed the cold, enchanted metal. The Helm of Radiance. It was designed to inspire hope in all who saw it. It was also designed for someone with a head shape significantly more heroic than mine. Zephyr had a square jaw and perfect hair that somehow acted as padding. I had a slightly pointy chin and hair that panicked when confined. I pulled the helmet on. It immediately slid down, covering my eyes and resting heavily on the bridge of my nose. The smell hit me instantly, a mix of stale sweat, ozone, and the distinct metallic tang of ego. I had to tilt my head back just to see through the eye slits, which gave me a permanent haughty strut that people mistook for confidence. I grabbed Zephyr's sword, the Sunblade, from where it had clattered on the pavement. It was heavy, ridiculously heavy. It was like trying to swing a parking meter. I didn't lift it so much as I dragged it, the tip creating a distinct screeching sound against the cobblestones. Scrap! Scrap! "Looking good, Gary," the florist called out, sweeping up some dirt. "You really have his chin." "Shut up, Stan," I muttered inside the echo chamber of the helmet. I lumbered toward the village gates. The laundry basket was left behind, guarded by the cat, which was probably the safest it had been all day. My job was simple: go to the edge of town, look golden, and convince whatever horror was coming over the hill that I was Zephyr, and that they should terrified. The problem was, today wasn't just a stray kobold or a confused slime. As I cleared the gate, squinting through the oversized visor, I saw them. Orcs. A raiding party. And not the scrawny ones from the tutorial levels. These were the Blood Tusk clan. I recognized the clan markings because Zephyr had killed their chieftain's cousin last week and wouldn't shut up about it over breakfast. There were about 12 of them, hulking masses of muscle and bad dentistry, wearing armor made of things that used to be alive. And leading them was a beast the size of a carriage, wielding a hammer that looked like it was actually a small anvil tied to a tree trunk. My stomach did a little acrobatic routine. I considered running, but with the helmet and the sword, I'd make it about 3 feet before toppling over like a turtle. Plus, Mom was watching from the window. I could feel her gaze burning a hole in the back of my neck. The orcs stopped about 20 yards away. The leader snorted, a sound like a chainsaw hitting a wet log. He squinted at me. "Zephyr!" the leader roared. His voice was deep enough to vibrate my molars. "Chosen one, we have come to crush your skull and use your ribs as toothpicks." Okay, be cool, Gary. Survive. Confusion, misdirection, bribery. I planted the heavy tip of the sword into the dirt and leaned on it, trying to look casual and not like I was using it as a crutch to keep my knees from buckling. I tilted my head back so I could see him through the slit. "Whoa, whoa, gentlemen!" I shouted, my voice echoing weirdly inside the helmet. I tried to project, pitching my voice deeper, trying to mimic Zephyr's sonorous baritone. It came out sounding more like a sarcastic trombone. "Time out! Hold the phone!" The orc leader blinked. His minions looked at each other, confused. They were used to battle cries, not administrative pauses. "What is this?" the leader bellowed. "Draw your blade, hero!" "Yeah, about that," I said, waving a hand dismissively. "Look, what is it? Grok? Thud? What's your name, big guy?" "I am Gorthok the Dismemberer." "Right, Gorthok. Nice to meet you. Love the hammer. Very rustic," I said. "Here's the situation. Did you guys not get the raven?" Gorthok lowered his hammer an inch. "Raven?" "The Raven," I repeated, feigning exasperation. "The scheduling Raven. My secretary, Gary, handsome guy, very intelligent, he sent a Raven out yesterday. This whole raid, it's been pushed." Silence settled over the dusty road like a heavy blanket. The wind whistled through the eye slits of my helmet. "Pushed?" one of the smaller orcs in the back asked. "Pushed to when?" "Next Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. It's a whole thing. Celestial alignment issues, the servers are lagging. You know how it is with the gods, right? 1 minute it's smite the wicked. The next minute it's system maintenance scheduled for 4 a.m. We can't have a climactic battle during maintenance. The loot drops won't register. You guys want loot, right?" The orcs murmured amongst themselves. The word loot was a universal language. "No loot?" Gorthok asked, looking genuinely concerned. "Zero loot," I said, shaking my head sadly. The helmet rattled. "If you kill me now, I drop nothing. Maybe a lint ball, a slightly used handkerchief. But if you come back next week, oh man, legendary armor, enchanted gems, I'm talking the good stuff, fresh respawn loot." Gorthok scratched his chin with a claw the size of a steak knife. "We walked very far," he grumbled. "My feet hurt." "I get that. I totally get that," I said, stepping forward, a risky move. "I tell you what, since there was a mix-up with the clerical staff—" I paused, reaching into the pouch on my belt. "I didn't have gold. Zephyr spent all our gold on hair conditioner. But I did have something else." I pulled out a handful of coupons. "I can offer you these," I said, holding them out towards the bloodthirsty horde. "These are valid at Ye Old Sandwich Shop back in town. Buy 1 foot-long meatball sub, get 1 half off. Valid only on weekdays." Gorthok squinted at the pieces of parchment fluttering in my hand. "Meatball?" "It's good meat," I promised. "I think it's cow. Might be goat. Very tender. Look, Gorthok, let's be real. You fight me now, I'm gonna have to use the—" I lowered my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "The move." The orcs stiffened. Every hero had a move. Zephyr's move was usually spinning around like a glowing disco ball. My move was usually fetal position crying, but they didn't know that. "Not the move," the small orc whispered. "Yes, the move," I said gravely. "The one with the explosions and the holy light that blinds you for 3 days? Nobody wants that on a Tuesday afternoon. You're tired, I'm tired. My armor is chafing in places I can't discuss in mixed company. Why don't you guys take the coupons, go get some subs, rest up, and we do this properly next week? I'll even make sure the bards are here. You want the bards to record your victory, right?" Gorthok looked at his minions. He looked at the hammer. He looked at the coupons. "Bards?" he asked softly. "The best bards," I lied. "I'll get the guy with the lute who knows that rhyming song about dragon slaying. You'll be famous." Gorthok huffed, a blast of hot, rotting air that hit me even from 20 feet away. He shoved his hammer into a loop on his belt. "Fine," he snarled, "but we come back Wednesday, and if no bards, I eat your brother." "My yes, me. You will eat me. Understood," I corrected quickly. Gorthok stomped forward, snatched the coupons from my hand with aggressive speed, and turned to his troops. "All right, boys, lunch break, then back to the cave. We raid Wednesday." "Double meat for the leader," I shouted helpfully as they turned around. "Double meat!" Gorthok cheered, pumping his fist. I stood there, frozen, watching the dust settle as the terrifying raiding party ambled off toward the sandwich shop. I waited until they were fully over the hill before I allowed my knees to liquefy. I slumped down right there in the dirt, the sword clattering loudly. I yanked the helmet off, gasping for fresh air. My hair was plastered to my forehead, and I was sweating so much I was pretty sure I was dehydrating in real time. A shadow fell over me. I looked up. It was Stan the florist. "That was amazing, Zephyr," Stan beamed. "I didn't know you knew orcish diplomacy." "It's a rare skill tree," I wheezed, wiping my face with my sleeve. "Stan, do me a favor. Anything, hero. Go to the sandwich shop, tell them to put it on my tab, and if they ask, tell them the coupons are valid. I don't care if they expired last month. Just give the orcs the meatballs." "On it," Stan saluted and ran off. I sat there for a moment, listening to the distant, muffled cursing of my mother, who was probably upset that I hadn't decapitated anyone. I looked up at the sky. It was a beautiful, clear afternoon. Somewhere up there, in the celestial waiting room, Zephyr was probably flirting with a Valkyrie or complaining about the Wi-Fi speed. 3 to 5 business days, I whispered to myself, closing my eyes. I hate this job. I really hoped Zephyr respawned before the necromancer scheduled for Friday showed up. I didn't have any coupons for the pizza place. I hauled myself up. The armor rattled like a bag of silverware thrown down a staircase. I had to go back and get the laundry. If I left the whites out too long, the stains would set, and then I would be the one dying dramatically. And unlike Zephyr, I didn't have a respawn point. I just had a chore list and a very specific headache that was starting to throb right behind my left eye. Being the chosen one? Easy. You swing a sword, you kiss the princess, you die, you nap. Being the chosen one's brother, that's where the real work is. I grabbed the sword by the hilt and began the long, screeching drag back to the house. I wondered if I could convince the Dark Lord that we were under audit next time. It was worth a shot. As I walked, a sudden thunderclap boomed overhead, though there wasn't a cloud in the sky. A single burning piece of parchment fluttered down from the heavens, landing directly on my nose. I crossed my eyes to look at it. It was a celestial memo. "Dear Gary," it read in letters made of burning light, "forgot my wallet in my other pants, the ones in the wash. Please send 500 gold coins to the Sky Temple ASAP. Valkyrie drinks are expensive. Love, Zephyr. P.S. Don't touch my sword." I crumbled the holy parchment into a ball and threw it into the gutter. "I'm touching the sword, Zephyr," I shouted at the sky. "I'm dragging the sword. I might even use it to open a can of beans." No response from the heavens, just the distant sound of orcs arguing about mayonnaise. I picked up the laundry basket with my free hand. 1 hero down. 3 days to go. I needed a nap. But first, I had to separate the darks. Because if the hero of the realm shows up in pink underwear, nobody is going to believe the blood of my enemies excuse, not even the orcs. I trudged back into the house, kicking the door shut behind me. Use the helmet to hold the door open? Why not? It wasn't like Zephyr was using it. "Gary," Mom shouted from the kitchen, "did you defeat them?" "They surrendered, Mom," I yelled back, stripping off the gauntlets. "They were overwhelmed by my aura." "Good," she called back. "Now take out the trash. The dragon carcasses are starting to smell." "I'm on it," I sighed. I am Gary, brother of Zephyr, keeper of the laundry, manager of the schedule, and currently the only thing standing between this kingdom and total destruction. God help us all. Day 3, 72%. That was the number floating in the upper right-hand corner of my vision, a glowing, translucent progress bar that only I could see. It was the Zephyr download status. My brother, the Golden Boy, was currently buffering somewhere in the celestial cloud, presumably putting on his spectral pants one leg at a time. 72% meant I had, at best, another 24 hours before he materialized in a beam of holy light, struck a pose, and asked me why the kingdom was on fire. Which meant I had to survive 24 more hours of pretending to be him. "Behold the maw of despair," a voice whispered next to my ear, dripping with unnecessary reverb. "Where shadows dance and hope goes to wither like a frost-bitten rose." I sighed, adjusting the shoulder strap of my very heavy, very unmagical backpack. "It's a cave, Luthar. It's a wet cave." Luthar the Moonweaver, Zephyr's resident elven ranger, turned his violet eyes toward me. He was tall, painfully thin, and wore a cloak made of what looked like dryer lint and shadows. He didn't speak in sentences, he spoke in riddles and angsty poetry. It was exhausting. "The darkness breathes," Luthar intoned, staring intensely at a puddle. "That's a draft," I said, pointing to the crack in the rock face. "And don't call me Zephyr. I told you I'm undergoing a spiritual metamorphosis. Call me Gary, the Garyis." Gary. Luthar tasted the word like it was a grape that had gone off. "A name of earth, of soil, humble. I sense your intent, chosen one. You seek to ground yourself before ascending." "Sure, let's go with that." "I say we blow it," came a gravelly shout from below my kneecaps. I looked down. Thrum, the dwarven demolitionist, was vibrating. He was a cube of muscle and beard, roughly 4 feet high and 4 feet wide, strapped with enough black powder to level a medium-sized municipality. He held a lit match in one hand and a bundle of dynamite in the other. "Thrum, no," I said, swatting the match away. "We are not blowing up the entrance to the dungeon of eternal doom. We need to go inside it." "But it's a door," Thrum argued, his beard twitching. "Doors are just obstacles that haven't exploded yet." "It's a structural archway," I corrected him, tapping the stone. "You blow this, you destabilize the load-bearing strata of the cliff face. We don't die from the trap, we die from a landslide. And I am not filling out the paperwork for a landslide." "Admin," Thrum spat. "You've changed, Zephyr. You used to just kick doors down." "My glutes are tight," I lied. "Let's move." This was my life now, leading Zephyr's elite party on a quest to retrieve the Gem of Infinite Shininess, or whatever it was called. Zephyr had accepted the quest right before his tragic Cape accident, and apparently the quest giver had a strict no-refund policy. If we didn't get the gem by tomorrow, the local duke was going to foreclose on the guild hall. We stepped into the darkness. Now, before I was the brother of the chosen one, I had a job, a real job. I was a junior health and safety inspector for the kingdom's Department of Infrastructure. I spent my days measuring railing heights and checking for black mold in tavern basements. I knew building codes. I knew occupancy limits. The Dungeon of Eternal Doom was a code violation nightmare. "Watch your step," I called out, my voice echoing off the damp walls. "There's no traction on these stairs. Serious slip and fall liability here." Luthar glided past me, his feet barely touching the ground. "The path of the hero is fraught with peril." "Yeah, well, the path of the hero could use some grip tape," I muttered, gripping the slime-covered wall. We descended deeper. The air grew cold and smelled of ammonia and old gym socks. Thrum was humming a tune that sounded suspiciously like a fuse burning down, which made me nervous. After about 20 minutes of walking and Luthar commenting on the emotional state of the stalactites, we reached a large circular chamber. The floor was paved with intricate tiles, and on the far side, a massive stone door awaited. "Halt!" Luthar hissed, throwing an arm out to stop me. He struck a pose, looking sleek and dangerous. The air, it tastes of iron and silence. "It's a trap room," Thrum said gleefully, unhooking a grenade from his belt. "I smell mechanisms, oil, springs. Let me just lob a big banger in there and clear the room." "No explosives," I snapped. "Thrum, look at the ceiling visuals. Look at the masonry. This is third-era construction. You set off a concussion blast in here, and that vaulted ceiling comes down. We'll be pancakes." "Then how do we cross?" Luthar asked, looking at the floor. "The tiles, they are a puzzle, a dance of death. One wrong step, and the earth shall swallow us." I squinted at the floor. It was a classic checkerboard pattern, pressure plates. Zephyr usually handled these by backflipping over them, or just tanking the damage because his abs were harder than diamond. I, however, had the core strength of a lukewarm eclair. "Okay," I said, rubbing my chin. "Let me look at this." I walked to the edge of the tiles. I didn't look at the mystical symbols. I looked at the grout lines. "See that?" I pointed to a tile with a picture of a skull on it. "The grout is cracked. And look at the elevation. It's sitting about a quarter inch higher than the others." "A lure for the foolish," Luthar whispered.
"No, it's settling," I said. "Poor foundation work. And over there," I pointed to a tile with a flower on it, "see the scrape marks on the stone edge? Repeated friction." I knelt down, pulling a multi-tool out of my pocket. It wasn't a sword. It was a glorified screwdriver set I'd bought for 5 copper pieces. "What are you doing, great Zephyr?" Thrum asked, lowering his grenade slightly. "Are you casting a spell of unscrewing?" "Something like that." I moved to the wall adjacent to the trap floor. Usually, in these dungeons, the architects were obsessed with aesthetics, but lazy about maintenance access. If you have a complex mechanical trap involving poison darts or spikes, you need a way to reload it. You don't reload a spike pit by walking over the spike pit. I tapped the stone wall. Thunk, thunk, hollow thud. "Gotcha," I whispered. I jammed the flathead attachment of my tool into the seam between 2 stone blocks and leveraged it. With a groan of grinding stone and a little bit of swearing on my part, a hidden panel popped open. Inside wasn't a magical rune. It was a rusted conglomeration of gears, chains, and a lever that looked like it hadn't been greased since the Dark Ages. "Behold," I said, gesturing to the rusty mess, "the disable switch." "By the stars," Luthar gasped, his eyes widening. "You have found the heart of the dungeon, the mechanical soul of the beast." "I found the breaker box," I corrected. "Look at this wiring. It's a fire hazard. Who inspected this?" I reached in. There was a large iron pin holding the main gear in place. I jiggled it. Stuck. "Thrum," I said, "give me the hammer." "The war hammer?" Thrum asked, reaching for the massive sledge on his back. "No, the little ball-peen hammer you use for tapping in fuses." Thrum looked disappointed, but handed me the tiny hammer. I gave the pin a sharp tap. Clang. Nothing happened. "It requires the blood of a warrior," Luthar suggested helpfully. "It requires WD-40, I mumbled. I spat on the pin, gross but effective, and whacked it again. Clunk. The pin slid out. A loud whir-click echoed through the room. The pressure plates on the floor all sank down an inch and locked into place with a definitive thud. The trap was disarmed.
"The way is open," Luthar cried, raising his bow. "Your wisdom knows no bounds, Zephyr. You saw through the illusion of the tiles and struck at the shadow behind them." "He hit the wall with a hammer," Thrum observed, looking impressed. "I like it. Minimal boom, maximum efficiency." "Let's just keep moving," I said, wiping my greasy hands on my tunic. "And remind me to write a citation for the dungeon keeper. That panel was not up to code." We pressed on. The dungeon got grosser. The air grew thick with webs. Not the cute little cobwebs you find in the corner of your ceiling. These were thick, sticky strands the size of climbing ropes. "Spiders," Thrum grumbled, hacking at a web with his axe. "I hate spiders. Too many legs, not enough flammable surface area." "We enter the domain of the Weaver," Luthar said, knocking an arrow. "She who spins the silken shrouds of the lost." "Great," I said, peeling a web off my face. "Just what I wanted, a giant bug." We entered a cavern so large the ceiling was lost in the gloom. The floor was littered with bundles, white silken bundles that looked suspiciously like former adventurers. In the center of the room, descending from the darkness on a thread thick as a tree trunk, was the source of our problems. The Brood Mother. She was massive, the size of a 2-story house, with hairy legs that clicked against the stone and 8 eyes that glowed with a malice I usually only saw at the DMV. Her fangs dripped with venom that hissed when it hit the floor. "Boss fight!" Thrum yelled, reaching for his big one, a bomb the size of a pumpkin. "For the glory of Zephyr!" Luthar shouted, drawing 2 daggers. "Wait!" I screamed, throwing my arms out. The spider hissed, a sound like a steam pipe bursting. She reared up, exposing her underbelly. "She's vulnerable!" Thrum yelled. "I can stick a charge right on her thorax." "Hold on!" I yelled, stepping forward. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a bird trapped in a shoebox. I wasn't doing this because I was brave. I was doing this because I noticed something the others hadn't. Behind the massive spider, tucked into the crevices of the cave wall, were thousands of egg sacs, and swarming around them were thousands of tiny fist-sized spiders. This wasn't a monster guarding a treasure. This was a mom guarding a nursery. And she looked tired. Her exoskeleton was dull. One of her legs was favoring the joint. And the way she was chittering, it wasn't a war cry. I'd heard that sound before. It was the sound human mothers make when they are surrounded by toddlers and someone tries to sell them solar panels. "Back down," I ordered my party. "But stand down, Thrum. Put the bomb away." I walked toward the beast. I didn't draw the sunblade. I didn't put on the helmet of radiance. I looked small, fleshy, and very edible. The spider lowered herself, fangs dripping, inches from my face. I could smell her breath. It smelled like old flies. "Hey," I said softly. The spider clicked her mandibles. I gestured vaguely to the wall of baby spiders. "Rough day?" The spider paused. She tilted her massive head. Her thousands of babies were currently crawling over each other, making a high-pitched rustling noise that was headache-inducing. "I get it," I said, keeping my hands where she could see them. "You've got, what, 5,000 of them? And let me guess, the dad is useless? Probably got eaten during the mating ritual." The spider made a low, chittering sound that sounded suspiciously like a sigh. "Yeah, look, we don't want to hurt the kids," I said, taking a slow step forward. "We just need to get through to the treasure room in the back. I bet these guys," I pointed to Luthar and Thrum, "were just loud and woke the baby, right?" The spider hissed at Thrum. "I knew it," I said. "Thrum is very loud. I apologize. It's hard to get good help." I slowly reached into my backpack. The spider tensed, her legs bunching to spring. "Easy, easy," I murmured. "I'm not reaching for a weapon. I'm reaching for lunch." I pulled out a brown paper bag. It was my lunch. My mom had packed it. I opened the bag and pulled out a sandwich. It was ham and cheese on rye, cut diagonally, with the crusts cut off because Mom still thinks I'm 12. "You look hungry," I said to the giant arachnid, "and I know you don't get a lot of protein that isn't, screaming adventurer. This is ham. It's cured pork, very salty, very savory." I held the sandwich out. Luthar gasped behind me. He offers a tribute to the beast, a sacrifice of sustenance." "He's feeding it a sandwich," Thrum deadpanned. The giant spider leaned in. Her massive, multifaceted eyes inspected the sandwich. She sniffed it. Then, with a delicacy that was surprising for a creature of her size, she used one massive pedipalp to gently take the sandwich from my hand. She brought it to her mouth. Crunch, squish. She paused. The flavors of mayonnaise and mustard seemed to register. She made a happy clicking sound. "It's good, right?" I said, smiling weakly. "Mom's secret is a little bit of paprika in the mayo." The spider looked at me, then looked at the bag in my other hand. "Oh, you want the rest?" I asked. I pulled out an apple and a juice box. "Here, take the juice box. You look dehydrated." The spider took the juice box. She pierced it with a single fang and drained it in a microsecond. She looked at me again. The malice was gone. In its place was the weary gratitude of a single mother who had just been handed a free meal and 5 minutes of adult conversation. She chittered softly, then stepped aside, gesturing with one leg toward the tunnel behind her. "Thank you," I said, bowing slightly. "You're doing a great job with the kids, by the way. Very lively." I waved at the party. "Come on, slowly. Don't make eye contact with the babies. And Thrum, if you light a match, she will eat you and I will let her." We walked past the massive arachnid. As I passed, she gently nudged my shoulder with a hairy leg. It was almost affectionate. Or maybe she was wiping mustard off her face. I chose to believe it was a fist bump. We walked into the tunnel, leaving the clicking nursery behind. Once we were out of earshot, Luthar grabbed my arm. His eyes were shining with tears. "Incredible," he whispered. "You looked into the soul of the beast and found its hunger. You didn't slay the monster. You tamed its spirit. You are truly the beast whisperer, Zephyr." "I have never seen a tactic like that," Thrum admitted, shaking his head. "I usually just blow the legs off. But you used the ham of peace? Is that a new paladin ability? Summon deli meat?" "It's an unlocked skill," I said, rubbing my temples. "High-level diplomacy." "Unbelievable!" Luthar was shaking his head. "The bards shall sing of this, Zephyr and the feast of the arachnid. How did you know she would accept the offering?" "Because," I said, adjusting my backpack, "everybody likes a free sandwich, Luthar. It's a universal constant. Now, let's get this gem so we can leave. I have laundry to do, and I'm pretty sure I just fed my lunch to a dungeon boss, so now I'm starving." We found the gem of infinite shininess in the next room. It was on a pedestal. No traps. I grabbed it, shoved it in my pocket, and we walked out the back exit. As we emerged into the sunlight, I checked my internal HUD. Zephyr download status 78%. Still hours to go. "What is next, O great leader?" Thrum asked, hefting his axes. "Shall we hunt the dragon of the northern peaks, or perhaps dismantle the Goblin King's fortress brick by brick?" I looked at the sun. It was getting late. My feet hurt, my back hurt. I smelled like spider breath and damp cave. "Next," I said, "we are going to the tavern. I need a drink. And Thrum?" "Yes, boss?" "You're buying. I'm out of sandwiches." The two of them laughed, slapping me on the back with enough force to dislocate a vertebra. They thought I was a genius. They thought I was a mystic warrior poet. I was just Gary, and being the chosen one's brother really, really sucks. But hey, at least the spider didn't eat me. I count that as a win. Now, if I can just figure out how to get goblin blood out of a silk cape before Zephyr respawns, I might actually survive the week. 99%. I was staring at the upper right-hand corner of my visual field, right where the celestial HUD projected the download status of Zephyr's soul. It had been sitting at 99% for the last 4 hours. The little golden hourglass was spinning and spinning and spinning. It was the spinning wheel of death, the buffering symbol of the apocalypse. "Come on," I whispered, tapping the side of my head, hoping percussive maintenance worked on divine software. "Load, you golden idiot! Load!" Nothing, just the spin. I wasn't standing in a safe meadow or waiting in a tavern this time. No, I was standing at the pinnacle of the Spire of Agony, a structure that defied both gravity and architectural good taste. It was 1,000 feet of obsidian needle jabbing into the storm clouds, located in the heart of the Deadlands. And standing in front of me was Malachor the Soul Drinker. Malachor was a lot. He was floating about 3 feet off the ground, wrapped in robes made of screaming faces, which I assume was a magical illusion, but honestly, tacky, holding a staff topping with a glowing red skull. The room was lit by floating braziers of green fire, which gave everyone a sickly, seasick complexion. "At last!" Malachor boomed, his voice amplified by magic so that it vibrated my fillings. "The Chosen One returns to face me. Prepare to have your essence stripped from your bones, Zephyr." I stood there, panting. I had just climbed 4,000 stairs because the Spire of Agony does not include an elevator. My thighs were burning with the fire of 1,000 suns. I was sweaty, I was chafing, and I was holding absolutely nothing. "Hi," I wheezed, holding up a finger. "Just give me a sec. Cardio." Malachor floated there, his red eyes narrowing. "You look smaller and less shiny. Where is your armor? Where is the sunblade?" "Right, the sword." "Okay, so," I said, putting my hands on my knees and trying to catch my breath. "Funny story about the sword. We were in the lobby, you know, the foyer of eternal dread downstairs, and there was a vending machine." "A vending machine?" asked. He lowered himself a few inches. "Yeah, a snack potion dispenser. I was low on electrolytes. I put in 2 gold coins for a blue mana Gatorade, and the machine ate my money." "It is a mimic?" "No, that's the worst part." I stood up, wiping sweat from my forehead. "It wasn't a monster. It was just a broken machine. So I tried to use the sunblade to, shimmy the coin return slot to get my money back." Malachor stared at me. The screaming faces on his robe seemed to pause their screaming to listen. And the blade got stuck," I sighed. "It's wedged in there tight. I tried to pull it out, but I think I tripped a tamper alarm, and these metal shutters came down. So, yeah, the legendary Sunblade is currently locked inside a dispenser of lukewarm beverages in your lobby. I'm hoping you have a key?" Malachor blinked. You jammed a holy relic into a snack dispenser? It was 2 gold coins, Malachor. Do you know the exchange rate right now?" "Enough," Malachor roared. He raised his staff. The skull's eyes flared with blinding necrotic energy. "Insolence! Mockery! You dare face the Lord of Shadows unarmed? Then you shall die like a worm!" He thrust the staff forward. A bolt of crackling black lightning, thick as a tree trunk, screamed toward my chest. At that exact moment, I realized my glasses were sliding down my nose. It's the sweat. It makes the bridge of my nose slippery. If I didn't catch them, they'd shatter on the obsidian floor, and I'd be blind for the fight. So I did what any person with bad eyesight would do. I dropped into a crouch to catch them. Whoosh!
The death spell singed the hairs on the back of my neck, missing me by a fraction of an inch. It slammed into the wall behind me, blowing a hole the size of a minivan into the stone. I grabbed my glasses before they hit the floor, clutching them to my chest. "Got 'em," I muttered. "Protective lenses, not cheap." I stood up, cleaning the lenses on my shirt. Malachor was staring at his staff, then at me, then back at the staff. You dodged the bolt of eternal night?" I put the glasses back on, blinking. The world came back into focus. "Oh, that? Yeah. Whoa, that looked dangerous. You should be careful with that." "Dangerous? It is death incarnate." "Well, you missed," I pointed out. "I never miss," Malachor shrieked. He spun the staff. "Take this, the flames of perdition!" He swept the staff horizontally, sending a wave of green fire rolling toward me at waist height. Simultaneously, I realized my shoelace was untied. I can't fight the Dark Lord with an untied shoe. That's a tripping hazard. And, as a former health and safety inspector, I take trip hazards very seriously. I bent down on one knee to retie the lace. The sheet of green fire roared over my head, singeing my eyebrows, but leaving the rest of me completely unharmed. It washed over the balcony and dissipated into the storm. I finished the knot, a double knot, for safety, and stood up. Malachor was now vibrating with rage. He floated higher. "How? You mock my sorcery with your calisthenics!" "I'm not mocking you," I said, checking the HUD. 99%. Still. Come on, Zephyr. Reboot. Refresh. Do something. "I am Malachor. I have crushed kingdoms. I have enslaved nations." I know, I said, waving a hand dismissively. "Look, Malachor, can we just pause for a second? I'm tired. The stairs were a lot, and honestly, looking around this place." I gestured to the vast, cavernous throne room with its floating candles, magically suspended tapestries, and open-air balconies that let in the rain. Malachor paused, a ball of plasma forming in his hand. "Concerns? You fear for your life?" "No, I mean financial concerns," I said. "For you." The ball of plasma flickered. "What?" I took a step forward. I didn't have a sword, but I did have something else. In my back pocket, I had a small notepad and a pen. I pulled them out. The pen click echoed in the silence. "Okay, look at this lighting setup," I said, pointing to the green fire. "Magical fire requires what? Soul residue? Crushed void crystals?" "Void crystals," Malachor answered automatically. "Imported from the nether." I scribbled on the pad. "Right. Imported. That means tariffs. Do you know the current tariff rate on interdimensional imports? It went up last quarter. You're burning, let's see, 40 braziers in this room alone. That's thousands of gold pieces a month just on mood lighting. This is why you don't have a railing on that staircase, isn't it? You're house poor." Malachor lowered his hand. The plasma dissipated.
The Dark Tower requires an atmosphere of dread. It requires a budget audit is what it requires, I countered. And let's talk about the minions. Orcs? Goblins? I saw a battalion of skeletal archers on floor 42. The Legion of Bone, Malakor corrected proudly. They require no food. They are the perfect soldiers. Sure, no food, I conceded, tapping the pen against my chin. But calcium supplements? Bone polish? If you don't maintain the calcium density, they get brittle. One hit from a mace and they shatter. Replacement costs on skeletons are astronomical because you have to reanimate them. That's high-level necromancy. That costs mana. And where are you getting your mana? Malakor shifted in the air. He looked uncomfortable. I siphon it from the ley lines. Which are taxed by the Imperial Mage Guild, I said comfortably. I saw the meter on the way in. You are running this place on commercial rates, my friend. You're not zoned for residential villainy. You're paying triple the cost per kilowatt of magic. Malakor touched down on the floor. He stopped floating. He looked at his staff, then looked at me. It has been expensive lately, he admitted, his voice dropping to a normal volume. I bet, I said, sympathizing. And the plan? World domination? Yes, to rule all under my iron heel. Okay, walk me through the P&L on that, I said. Profit and loss. You conquer the world, congratulations. Now you own the infrastructure. You own the roads. You own the sewers. Do you know how much it costs to maintain a kingdom-wide sewer system? It's a nightmare. You think being a Dark Lord is fun? Wait until you have to deal with a sanitation strike in the capital city because the goblins want dental. Malakor looked horrified. The goblins want dental? They always want dental. They have terrible teeth. It's the sugar in their diet, I explained. So, you conquer everything. You destroy the tax base because you killed all the peasants. Who is paying for the road repairs? You are, out of pocket. You're not acquiring an asset, Malakor. You're acquiring a liability. Malakor paced. He actually paced. He walked back and forth in front of his throne, his cloak of screaming faces looking distinctly worried. I thought the plunder would cover it, he muttered. Plunder is a one-time injection of capital, I said, shaking my head. It's not sustainable revenue. You burn through the plunder in year 1, building statues of yourself. Then what? Year 2 is a recession. Year 3, the heroes respawn, because we always respawn, and they come back with better gear, because you stimulated the economy by creating a demand for weapons. You're actually funding your own destruction. Malakor stopped. He looked at me with wide, red eyes. By the flame! You're right! I am in a debt trap! It's a classic villain blunder, I said softly. Overexpansion. You scaled up too fast. You built the giant tower before you secured the supply chain. Wait, I checked the HUD. Zephyr download status, 99%, error, retrying connection. Oh, come on. Malakor slumped onto his throne. It was made of skulls. It is uncomfortable, he said, shifting his weight. The lumbar support is non-existent. Ergonomic nightmare, I agreed. So here is my pitch. You surrender. Surrender? Malakor stiffened. Never! I am the— Listen to me, I interrupted. You surrender. You abandon the tower. You declare bankruptcy. Chapter 11. Reorganization. You liquidate the skeletons, sell them to medical schools. Good money there. You fire the orcs, let them go freelance. You downsize to a nice, manageable dungeon. A condo dungeon, low overhead. You keep the terror, but you lose the maintenance costs. Malakor looked thoughtful. He stroked his chin. Condo dungeon? Think about it. You set up a consulting firm, Malakor's Fear Management. You charge kingdoms protection money not to attack them. Pure profit, minimal work. You get to monologue on Zoom calls. You can work from home. Malakor's eyes lit up. The red glow softened to a pleasant pink. Work from home? I could wear sweatpants? You could wear whatever you want. No more heavy robes. These faces scream all night, Malakor whispered, tugging at his robe. It is very hard to sleep. There you go, I said, closing my notepad with a snap. I can write you a letter of recommendation. I know a guy in the city planning office who can help you rezone. Malakor stood up. He looked 10 feet tall, but his posture was lighter. You are wiser than your brother. He usually just hits me with the sword until I explode. Zephyr is a manual labor kind of guy, I said. I'm management. Very well, Malakor declared. I shall abandon this foolish quest for domination. Physical assets are a shackle. I shall move my empire to the ethereal blockchain. Wait, no, crypto is also a bad, I started, but he was already casting a spell. Thank you, hero. I go to restructure my portfolio. With a thunderclap that sounded like a massive ledger slamming shut, Malakor vanished. The green fires winked out. The screaming faces faded. The tower was suddenly very quiet and very dark. I stood there, alone in the throne room. Did I just? I looked at my hands. Did I just corporate consult the Dark Lord out of existence? I let out a long breath, my shoulders slumping. Mom is never going to believe this. Suddenly, the air behind me shimmered. A chorus of angelic trumpets blasted, deafeningly loud. Golden light flooded the room, smelling of lavender and ozone. Fear not, citizens! Zephyr popped into existence. He was magnificent. He wore gleaming golden armor that fit perfectly. His hair was blowing in a wind that didn't exist. He held a ghostly version of the Sunblade. The real one was still in the vending machine. He struck a pose, muscles rippling, teeth sparkling. I have returned, Zephyr bellowed. Where is the fiend Malakor? Show yourself, villain! I am ready to battle for the fate of the— He stopped. He looked around the empty, dark room. He looked at me. I was leaning against a pillar, cleaning my glasses again. Gary? Zephyr asked, his voice dropping the heroic echo. Where's the boss fight? I skipped the cutscene to get here faster. He left, I said, putting my glasses back on. Left? What do you mean left? Did he flee in terror of my impending arrival? Sure, I said, too tired to explain the concept of overhead costs to a man who thought taxes were a type of lizard. He heard you were coming and realized he couldn't afford the medical bills. Let's go home, Zephyr. Zephyr lowered his ghost sword. He looked disappointed. But I had a new move. It's called the Supernova Slash. It uses all my mana. Save it for the rats in the basement, I said, walking past him toward the stairs. Come on, we have to stop at the vending machine in the lobby. I need you to break the glass. Why? Because your sword is in there, and I want my blue Gatorade. Zephyr jogged to catch up with me, his armor clanking melodically. You know, Gary, you're lucky I showed up when I did. If Malakor had been here, he would have toasted you. You really need to work on your combat skills. I stopped. I looked at my brother. I looked at the empty throne of the Dark Lord who was currently probably filing for an LLC. Yeah, Zephyr, I said, patting his golden shoulder. I'm lucky. That's all it is. Just dumb luck. Don't worry, Zephyr grinned, slinging an arm around me. I'm back now. You can go back to carrying the loot. I'll handle the saving the world stuff. You do that. Just try not to trip on the cape on the way down. The stairs are steep. As we descended the spire of agony, Zephyr began recounting the story of his time in the celestial waiting room. The Valkyries really dug my anecdotes, Gary. And I tuned him out. I took out my notepad and crossed off Defeat Dark Lord from my to-do list. Underneath it, I wrote, Pick up milk, fix vending machine, find new villain for next Tuesday. Because Malachor was right about one thing. The heroes always respawn. And that means the brothers' work is never done.
"Hey, Gary," Zephyr asked as we reached the 300th floor, "why does this place smell like vinegar and fear?" "That's the smell of victory, Zephyr," I said. "Smells like bureaucracy." We kept walking. I really hoped Malachor's new consulting firm was hiring. I looked good in sweatpants. The laurel wreath was itching. I don't know what kind of vegetation they use for the crown of eternal gratitude, but I'm pretty sure I'm allergic to it. It was scratching my forehead, leaving a red rash that I knew was going to look terrible in the commemorative oil paintings. I stood on the central balcony of the royal palace. Below me, the entire population of the capital city was cheering. They were chanting my name. Well, they were chanting, "Hero Brother," which was close enough. Confetti rained down from the parapets. Expensive, imported confetti, I noted with a wince. I hadn't approved that budget expenditure. "Citizens!" I shouted, my voice magnified by the royal crier, who was standing next to me screaming my words through a megaphone made of dragon bone. "Thank you! But really, it wasn't a traditional victory. It was mostly a matter of fiscal restructuring and corporate downsizing." "He is so humble," a woman in the front row screamed, weeping tears of joy. "He saved us with his humility." "No, I saved you with a spreadsheet," I yelled back. "Malachor didn't die. He just relocated his assets to an offshore haven to avoid litigation." "Huzzah for litigation!" the blacksmith bellowed, pumping his fist. I sighed. They didn't get it. They never got it. They wanted a story of valor, and I was giving them a story of administrative competence. But hey, I was alive. The Dark Tower was empty. The giant spider was well fed. And for the first time in a week, I wasn't wearing Zephyr's underwear. I was wearing my own sensible cotton briefs. Life was good. The king, a portly man whose crown was sliding dangerously over his left ear, stepped forward. He held a medal the size of a dinner plate. "Step forward, Gary," the king proclaimed. "For your unexpected and confusing bravery, we name you Protector of the Realm, Warden of the North, and Keeper of the—" Boom. It wasn't an explosion. It was the sound of the universe clearing its throat. A column of light, brighter than the sun and smelling distinctly of cocoa butter and expensive cologne, slammed down from the heavens. It struck the dais directly between me and the king. The force of it knocked me backward, sending the laurel wreath flying off my head into a punch bowl. The crowd gasped. The light was blinding, swirling with golden motes and tiny translucent cherubs playing kazoos. "Citizens!" a voice boomed. A voice like warm honey poured over gravel. A voice that had never cracked in puberty. The light faded, and there he was, Zephyr. He didn't look like a man who had spent a week dead. He looked fantastic. His golden hair was blown back by a wind that wasn't touching anyone else's hair. His armor was polished to a mirror sheen. He was deeply, richly tanned, as if the afterlife was just a resort in the tropics with a really good solarium. He was smiling that smile, the one that made milkmaids faint and tax collectors forgive debts. "Fear not," Zephyr shouted, raising a fist to the sky. "I have returned." For a second, there was silence. Then the crowd lost their minds. It was like a switch had been flipped. One second they were cheering for Hero Brother. The next, I was invisible. The roar was deafening. People were tearing their shirts. Babies were being thrown in the air and safely caught because Zephyr's presence buffed everyone's dexterity stats. Z-Fire! 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 Zephyr basked in it. He closed his eyes and absorbed the adoration like a solar panel. "Your Majesty," Zephyr said, turning to the king and bowing low, "I apologize for the delay. The celestial queue was remarkably long. Apparently there was a backlog of paladins from the Goblin Wars." "Zephyr!" the king wept, dropping the medal intended for me. He kicked it aside. He bear-hugged my brother. "You're alive! We were so worried. The kingdom was almost lost." "Almost lost?" Zephyr laughed, a rich, hearty sound. "Impossible, sire. Even from beyond the veil, I was projecting my heroic aura. I assume the Dark Lord Malachor fled." Well, yes," the king stammered. "He vanished. He dismantled his tower." Zephyr nodded knowingly, placing his hands on his hips. "Exactly as I planned. I focused my spiritual pressure from the spirit realm. It's a high-level technique. I knew if I concentrated hard enough while I was sipping ambrosia in the Hall of Heroes, Malachor would sense my impending return and crumble from sheer terror." I stood up, brushing dust off my trousers. "Actually, Zephyr, Zephyr spun around, his eyes widening. "Gary, there you are! Good job holding down the fort, little buddy." He walked over and ruffled my hair. I am 30 years old. He ruffled my hair like I was a golden retriever. "I hope you didn't get too scared. I know loud noises frighten you." "I defeated the spider," I said through gritted teeth. "I dismantled the traps. I audited the Dark Lord." "Audited?" Zephyr laughed again, slapping me on the back so hard my vision blurred. No, friends," he turned back to the crowd. "Let us give a round of applause to my brother for keeping my seat warm. It takes a lot of courage to stand near the throne without fainting." The crowd gave a polite smattering of applause. It was the kind of applause you give a child who successfully tied their shoes. "Now," Zephyr bellowed, "let the celebration truly begin. Drinks are on the crown." The crowd surged forward. I was jostled. I was shoved. An elbow caught me in the ribs. Within seconds, I was pushed to the back of the dais, pressed against a stone pillar. "Excuse me," the royal chamberlain said, appearing next to me. He looked down his nose at me. "Gary, was it?" "Yes, the guy who just—" Right. Listen, the hero is back, so we're going to need the guest room cleared out. Also," he reached behind the pillar and pulled out a mop and a bucket of soapy water. "Someone needs to clean up this confetti. It's a tripping hazard, and we know how much you love safety." He shoved the mop handle into my hand. I stared at the mop. I stared at Zephyr, who was currently signing a baby's forehead with a magical marker. The adrenaline of the week finally crashed. My shoulders slumped. I looked at the gray, dirty water in the bucket. "Fine," I whispered. I started mopping. Swish, swash. You might wonder why I do it. Why I don't just throw the mop at the chamberlain, steal a horse, and ride off to a kingdom where nobody knows who Zephry the Golden is. I ask myself that question every time I'm dissolving goblin gore with baking soda. Is it love? No. Zephyr once forgot my birthday 3 years in a row, then gave me a signed picture of himself as an apology. Is it duty? Maybe. Mom would kill me if I let the kingdom fall. She's very particular about property values. But really, it's the benefits.
Do you know what the premiums are for adventurers' insurance these days? It's astronomical. You lose a limb in a dungeon, and the copay alone will bankrupt you. But as the designated next of kin and support staff for a Class A hero, I get full coverage. Dental, vision, and limb regeneration. Plus, I get a discount at the sandwich shop. And, let's be honest, Zephyr is an idiot. I looked at him. He was trying to drink wine out of a goblet without taking his helmet off. He was spilling red violently down his chin, laughing as if it was a deliberate comedy bit. If I leave, he dies. Permanently. He'll forget to eat. He'll try to hug a gelatinous cube. He'll sign a contract with a devil without reading the terms and service. I am the guardrail on the highway of his destiny. I am the spell check on the scroll of his legend. "Hey, Gary!" Zephyr shouted, waving at me over the heads of the adoring fangirls. "I'm going to go greet the fans in the lower courtyard. They're chanting for an encore." "Zephyr, wait," I called out, leaning on the mop. "We installed a new—" "No time for waiting, brother! Destiny calls!" He turned, he planted his feet, he flashed a smile that sparkled with literal magical particles. Then he broke into a sprint. He ran toward the archway leading to the lower courtyard. The archway where, just yesterday, I had installed a pristine, floor-to-ceiling plate glass sliding door to keep the draft out. I had polished it myself this morning. It was invisible. It was perfect. "For Eldoria!" Zephyr screamed. He hit the glass at full sprinting speed. Thwack! It was a sound like a wet ham hitting a marble floor. The glass didn't break. Zephyr did. He crumpled. He slid down the glass like a cartoon character, leaving a face print of grease and shock. He hit the floor with a heavy metallic clatter. The sunblade skittered away. The crowd went silent. I watched. I waited. A moment later, a familiar sound filled the air, the low, humming buzz of a soul uploading. Zephyr's body began to glow, then dissolved into golden particles of light that drifted upward toward the ceiling. Ping! My internal HUD flickered to life. Zephyr status deceased. Respawn timer 3 to 5 business days. Reason for death blunt force trauma, hubris. Silence reigned on the balcony. The king was staring at the spot where Zephyr had been. The crowd was holding its breath. Then, slowly, all 5,000 heads turned toward me. The chamberlain looked at the mop in my hand. I sighed. A long, deep, bone-weary sigh. I dropped the mop. It clattered loudly on the stone. I walked over to where the sunblade lay. I bent down, bending with my knees, not my back, obviously, and picked it up. It was heavy. It was ridiculous. "All right," I said to the stunned crowd. "Show's over. Everyone go home. I have to fill out an incident report." I looked at the king. "And keep that medal. I have a feeling I'm going to earn it again by Friday." I turned and walked back into the palace, dragging the sword behind me. Scra-ah, scra-ah. Being the chosen one's brother sucks. But someone has to clean the glass.